All right, so English again. I hope you are ready. So the next speaker is MAD. And MAD standing for Making a Difference. And he's the CEO and founder of MAD Talks, which is a digital talk, podcast, and learning platform. He's also a media professional. He's a futurist, which is very exciting. And please help me welcome him to the stage. Tariq Qureishy.
Dzień dobry. How are you, everybody? How's everybody? This is a very dangerous time. Everybody is flat. So I'm going to... I'm not allowed to go there. I'm going to get you guys up, and we are going into a journey into the future, into the deep future, into the year 2025. And then into the year 2030, and we'll be talking about artificial intelligence. You've been hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, right? What we'll talk about today is AI, whether we should have AI or not to have AI. And that would be the final question for humanity. And the reason I'm saying that is very, very profound. Because for the first time in the history of humanity, we are creating something that is smarter than us. We are the leaders of the world not because we're the biggest or the strongest or the fastest, but because we are the smartest. And that is going to be the question today, and we will do a deep dive, and I'll take you on a journey into that. But before we go there, let me share something with you. Let me take you back to 1928 in Poland. It's one of the reasons I feel very inspired, involved, and connected when I come back to Poland. There was this is a love story. And you're wondering, what is a love story got to do with artificial intelligence? There was this lady, her name was Luba. She fell in love with a scientist at Cambridge and got married in 1928. And then she moved to India, out of all places, in 1936, and got a lot of people, saved a lot of people during the Holocaust and going up to the Second World War. This lady is a grandmother, my grandmother from my mother's side. So when I come back here, I actually feel somehow connected. The second part of this story is going to be at the end of this session, because that's the red piece that's actually missing. And then you'll understand how what we're going to be talking about today, how AI is actually connected. The question we have today, we've already asked, to AI or not to AI. So when you think about the future, what do you think are the one or two most important things that will define our future? Think about it. People say technology, of course. People also say blockchain, cloud, big data, correct? Those are the things you feel will impact the future? Of course it will. But actually, my thesis is entirely different. The fundamental thing that will define the future is not blockchain, is not artificial intelligence, it's not cloud, it's not data. What will define the future is trust, is ethics, is values and humanity. It's pointless to have blockchain if you don't have trust. It doesn't matter how much you can develop as far as biotechnology is concerned if you don't have ethics and values. If you don't have empathy, you can't connect. This is the future skill that we need to have, is about humanity, values, and trust. The second thing is that when there is digital intelligence, artificial intelligence, what we need to do as human beings is to develop our brain, our thinking, and our multiple intelligences. We currently use only about 2 or 3, our intelligence, our numerical intelligence, and perhaps some emotional intelligence. But we have about 10 intelligences. We have intelligences like spatial intelligence, spiritual intelligence, physical intelligence, all of the things that we needed to have to keep us alive and keep us successful in the past. We'll talk about all of these things, and I'll do a little case study of Dubai just to sort of give you a flavor, because I live in Dubai, that's where I'm from. Question for all of you today is, will we survive artificial intelligence? And I'll give you a lot of thoughts which will make you think very, very hard. And at the end, what really matters. So, artificial intelligence, biggest event in the world, perhaps the last. Stephen Hawking, one of the smartest people that ever lived in our lifetimes. Elon Musk says it's even more dangerous than nuclear weapons because it can be weaponized, and we have actually started seeing that. Bill Gates and several others are actually saying exactly this, that AI, uncontrolled, is extremely dangerous. So let's look into the future. When we look into the future, there are dilemmas, and those are the dilemmas we'll talk about today. Because intelligence, or artificial intelligence, will get into what is called artificial general intelligence, which is getting our human traits within machines. Then it goes into artificial superintelligence, where they think for themselves. AGI will probably be there by 2030, and artificial superintelligence by around 2040, 2045. So there is a lot going on there. So let's look at the good side of AI. We can solve the big challenges of the world. We can talk about poverty, healthcare, education, climate. And if we focus our minds towards this, we can actually take on some of the biggest problems in the world and actually solve them. There are more than 1 billion people in the world without even the very, very basic education and literacy. That can be addressed through AI. Simple healthcare, water, nutrition, simple things like that are actually missing in this world. AI can actually do that. AI can also help our businesses, our apps. It facilitates. I was doing a lot of work in the oil and gas sector recently, and you know that they only use about 2 to 5% of their data that they produce, the oil industry. Now, with AI, they can start using more. And it will fundamentally change the oil industry in terms of performance, in terms of optimization, and in terms of enhancing productivity and profitability. Fundamental shift. So not only can we save the world, we can enhance our businesses. I see AI as sort of intelligence augmented, intelligence in abundance, intelligence for everybody. Now, this chart basically shows that companies that were set in the 20th century were designed for the 20th century, and exponentially they are disappearing. And the companies that are for the 21st century are exponentially growing, and that's a great opportunity for the European startup days, because you have huge opportunities of growth because the old companies are actually going down. We are in the transformation decade. That is where we are at this point in time. So these are some of the positives of AI. We all love AI. I think it's all fun and sexy and so on. Let's look at the other side. What are the problems of AI? Artificial intelligence, by definition, has data bias and prejudice, because that is what we feed into it. So whether it's minorities or color, there are banks in the US that have been fined because their AI has decided not to give these people a loan because they are from a minority, or the black community. This happened in New Jersey. Data bias because the amount of data that can be captured, and you can have Big Brother over you all the time. This is a huge problem as we look at, in the short term, into AI. We know that AI can be weaponized. Weaponized in terms of data, weaponized in terms of robots. One of the first things that we wanted was to have robots not kill human beings. Guess what? There are 50 countries in the world and 20 actively, that is weaponizing and making killer robots today. What happens when these machines become 100 times, 1,000 times, million times smarter than us? Can they turn on us? All the movies that you actually see, it's actually true. You want to see the future? Go to Hollywood. And the last one is jobs. Now, as an optimist, I say that we will replace jobs because always progress has happened. But as a realist, there is a phase, a 10 to 15-year phase, a time period where there will be huge disruption of jobs. And we'll talk about that as we go forward. Now, another area. What are the longer-term issues? Think of nuclear fission. Data with AI can be weaponized just like nuclear fission. In the 1920s and 1930s, what happened was that people wanted to have abundant energy. So the atom was being split with a view to having a lot of energy. Guess what happened? 10 years later, there was a war. 15 years later, 2 cities got decimated. 500,000 people died and more. And guess what happened? That is when we started, as humans, to start changing things. Now, can we trust us human beings to do the sensible thing? Absolutely not. Because then for the next 50 years, we had a gun on our heads and we had the nuclear arms race. We couldn't even control our own production. Think of that with artificial intelligence, a gun on your head. Can we rely on the private sector? Facebook, you know what they've done? Cambridge Analytica, Brexit, Trump, we'll talk about that in a sec. So you've got that. You've got Amazon doesn't deliver to certain areas and they were fined for that. Facebook did something else in Australia. 12, 13-year-old kids were depressed. They were writing sad and unhappy and whatever. And they actually targeted that group of people because they were more vulnerable to impulse purchases. And these are the companies that we've given trust to. Can we depend on them? They're not there to save humanity. They are there to make money. And therefore, we cannot let AI be held in environments with people who can make money. And finally, when AI becomes so good by itself that it produces by itself, that becomes super intelligence and we have to. So these are some of the issues as I go into the disruption phase of this speech, where you can understand and think about whether we should have AI or not have AI. And if we do have AI, do we have ethics? Do we have values? Do we have morals? Do we have a social and human system that guides it and guides us? We spoke a lot about data. That's the new data tsunami that's coming. And the new leader in the data world is the surfer. And you have to surf the new data that's coming in. And AI actually helps you to do that. We are at the first 1/3 of this chart, where technology changes. The delta is growing and is growing at an exponential rate. And when people ask me, can you explain the difference between linear and exponential? And I do it very simply. If I walk up here like this, 30 steps, and each step is 1 meter, how far have I walked? I walked 30 meters, correct? But if I walk 30 dumpling steps, how far have I walked? 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. In 30 dumplings, that's exponential. Do you know how far we have walked? We have walked 1,700,000 meters, which is 26 times around the world. That's the difference between linear and exponential. We think linear, our cognitive development is linear, but we're living in an exponential world, and that's the disconnect, so we have to be very, very careful. Our friends, the dinosaurs, wanted to evolve. And this is a study that was done by Babson College in Boston. And the study basically states, which is great news for European startup days. And what it says is that 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 will no longer exist in the year 2025. Gone, toast, finished. However, 50% of the companies that will replace those 75% have not been born today. They are the startups of today. They are you. You are the ones who are doing that. So what is happening is that every single industry is getting disrupted. Some of them have already been disrupted, and a few are in the pipeline. AI is all the way through, and ethics and values is all the way through. Those are the constants that is going to be there when we look at disruption. One of the major disruptions in the world is climate change. It's probably the most important thing that's happening. Now, what is happening with climate change is that where we are today, if nothing major happens, the water level will rise enough that by 2050, 2055, it will disrupt a whole load of people. Guess how many refugees and displaced persons? 300 to 500 million people will be displaced. You think this was a problem in Syria? That was a picnic compared to this. Boundaries will break down. Geographies will be redefined. Passports will be reconsidered. Companies will be redesigned. So this is what happens within that. People remember this? Star Trek. They have a tricorder. We have a tricorder now. It was produced last year. So this is smarter than 16 doctors put together. How many people know CRISPR? CRISPR-Cas9, the gene. Few people. Now, this is a gene that once you inject it within your cell, you can develop your muscle, really develop your muscles. Here's a cute little dog, and this dog has a twin brother. And this twin brother was given the CRISPR gene. So now hang on. Once he gets the CRISPR gene, guess what happens? This is what happens to the dog, to the twin brother, genetically exactly the same. Guess what is that? Now, what's going on now? Countries have started disappearing. They've started testing on fetuses in China and other places. So this is also fundamentally changing, that we can build designer babies, super races, build things the way we want to build them. And that needs ethics and values, not technology. Technology we're good at. Ethics and values we're not. Elon Musk thinks this is the future. Put a little chip in your brain. I've spoken to parents in India and in China who would give this to their kid in a flash because they're so competitive. And again, ethics and values. What's the moral structure? This is interesting how jobs are going to change. Repetitive jobs are going to go away. So everybody wants one of these. And it's a cute little robot, and it will replace a lot of jobs. This has already replaced jobs. This is at Amazon. Let me give you a chart of United States. The number one job in the United States, in most of the states, is truck driver. Did you know that? And now, quickly look at this diagram. And the next one is all the states that were won by Trump. Because they were working on the concept of fear, because they were about to lose their jobs to automation. And that was the response. So, Facebook, we have already spoken about that. I'm moving much faster that we can finish some of the ideas. So anything and everything that can be automated will be. Why? Because it's going to be 1,000 times faster and 1,000 times cheaper. So of course it will be. But every single thing that cannot be automated, ladies and gentlemen, will be 100 times more valuable. Love, empathy, connection, relevance, intuition, heart, soul, spirit, love, hugs, all of these things will become 100 times more valuable. That is where we need to invest. Lots of parents in this room. When you have kids, these are the things you have to ask. If everything is being automated, what happens to all of these things? What happens to inefficiency and chance? Because that's how we learn. And there are some things that shouldn't really be automated. AI or not, government or not, private sector or not, do not automate this particular segments in purpose and meaning and relevance. This must remain with us as human beings. So what I'm doing is talking about fear and hope, as this balance between fear and hope. So if you are all ready for a little laugh, here's a lady, a grandmother. She was put in a self-driving automated Tesla for the first time last year. And see what happens to her. And all she was asked to do was she was asked not to hold the steering. That's all. She was sitting in the car, and she wasn't allowed to hold the steering. Enjoy.
I'm scared. Oh, this car is coming. Oh, this car is. Bill, just put me back for me control it. Oh, dear Jesus. I could never. Oh, where's it going? God damn, Bill. Oh, my God. Oh, this is so scary. Oh, Jesus, this is my first day out, and I'm about to die.
Oh, come on, relax.
Oh, my God, Bill. I couldn't do it.
You get the idea. The only thing she was asked to do was lose control. And the moment we start losing control, we scream. This is not the scream of an old lady. This is the screams of the telecoms companies when things come in. It's the scream of the lawyers when technology comes in. It's the scream of the accountants when it comes in. And we ask ourselves who's in control, them or us. And it's a friend of mine, Celeste. She's a show jumper. And she rides a horse, and she said, my horse is 10 times bigger and 50 times stronger, but I control it. That is how we control our AI. That is how we control our machines. And this is how we need to start thinking cognitively, because there's a cognitive disconnect that we have in our thing. And in the interest of time, I'll quickly run through one segment which you will like, which is on Dubai, and then I will wrap up. I live in this city. This thing is happening in front of our eyes. I lived in one of the apartments on the left-hand side, graduated, and I came there first time 25 years ago. And this has happened in the last 30, 35 years. This is happening, and this city is changing, and it's an experiment. It's not a rich country. It's a small country of 2 million population, but 400,000 local people. And this is what they have produced. This is how they visualize the future. In this future, they have blockchain 100% for all of the government by 2020. An AI minister, a happiness minister, a tolerance minister. And they are focused on those kinds of things because they get that. This is the future, the Museum of the Future they have designed, and some of the new things that they were looking at. Interestingly enough, 53% of the people polled said they want AI to address climate change, which is one of the things that we don't really do that well. And at the end of the day, it's about heart and happiness,
Sophia.
and then we go forward. Now, do people know Sophia?
Sophia.
You know Sophia, right?
I hope you're listening to me. That you have been now awarded what is going to be the first Saudi citizenship for a robot.
Oh, I would thank very much the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So a lot of people have seen this. The important thing is that Sophia has, citizenships are going to change, robots are going to start getting that. So whole idea of humanity and ethics starts coming in. Now, is Sophia a male or a female? Is it a male or a female? Female, yes? It's not. It's neither male nor female. It's a tin can. It's got wires and stuff, and things are put inside it, and that is what is going wrong. We cognitively are starting seeing robots as being more human. And that's part of the problem of ethics and so on. This is going to be our banks, half man, half horse, centaurs. And one last thing, and then we close. One last thing, literally. I have Mike here telling me to get on. Do I have 2 minutes? All right, with respect. All right, sir. NASA, about 35 years ago, did a study, a case study, creativity versus age. And they said, what happens to creativity as we go into the future, as we become older? Little kid, very high creativity, 95%. And then guess what? We send them to school. It goes down to 50%. Then we send them to college. It goes down to 25%. Then we're at 10% of our creativity. Our schooling system sucks. Our schooling system does not design ourselves for the future, it's designed for the past. Our political systems are for the past. So this has to be replaced, and then put all of these elements, ethics and so on, because all of these are also going down, and that is how we need to bring it back in. And these are the degrees of the future, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we are. So we've seen AI, we've seen all of those elements. Now I'm going to just tell you what happened to my grandmother, looking forward to 2028. Grandma Luba came to India, and with her husband and her son, they set up the biggest pharmaceutical company. It's a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical firm in India called Cipla. You can check it out, huge company. They created generic drugs and saved millions and millions of people in that particular process. She represents compassion, she represents empathy, she represents all ethics and values. She was Polish. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I would like to give back to you, is please go back and think of these values as we look at artificial intelligence and how we engage with artificial intelligence and how we look into the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tariq Qureishy, thank you. Tariq, if I could ask you for a moment to get off the stage.